To Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to a new year of Texas Family Leadership Council. On behalf of all of our chairs from all over the state, I want to thank you guys for being here. And we have a rich agenda moving forward. So, Marisol, I know you're going to give us a little update after we talk a little bit with Dr. Lowe. But let's go straight. I know that Jeffrey Lowe, Dr. Lowe from the Texas Pediatric Society, he has put him first on the agenda because he's a busy guy, right? I mean, so we just have to let him do his thing and then move on. Dr. Lowe, welcome very much. I know you're going to talk to us a little bit about the impact of weather and children. Is that what we're talking about today?
Yes, sir. Yeah, extreme weather and then just disaster preparedness, very briefly.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, take it away. Take it away, Jeff.
Okay. I am going to share my screen really quickly. Thank you so much for allowing me to come and speak.
And where are you out of, Dr. Lowe? Are you in Austin or?
I am at Dallas Children's.
Dallas Children's, okay.
Yes, sir, and
Excellent.
UT Southwestern.
Excellent.
My screen.
We see it. We see the PowerPoint, by the way. We saw it there for a minute.
I'm sorry.
It just disappeared.
Okay. Now. I'm just trying to get it to share where you can see the slides and not the presentation. Yeah.
Well, we see the presentation, but not this. But we also see the side slides. But I think you can
there we go.
Yeah.
There
it is. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yes, I am from the Texas Pediatric Society, and I am the Disaster Preparedness Committee co-chair for them, as well as the representing TPS, the Disaster Ambassador for Texas. I am from UT Southwestern in Dallas and work at Dallas Children's, and then wanted to give just a little bit, and I have no financial relationships or conflicts of interest. But Marisol did just ask that we give just a brief who Texas Pediatric Society is. And so we are the Texas chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. And one thing to note about the Pediatric Physician Society, AAP, we not only advocate for our discipline, but we advocate for our patients, being children, obviously. And so TPS believes that the most important resource the state of Texas has is its children. And so we pledge our efforts to promote their health and welfare. And then our mission is to focus our organization's talents and resources to ensure children in Texas are safe and healthy, and that our members feel supported and the practice of pediatrics continues to be fulfilling and viable. And then just a little bit about TPS. We have over 4,800 physician members, and that could be physicians, fellows, residents, and then we also have medical students, and any provider who cares for children in Texas is eligible for membership in TPS. So just a quick question to think about, but who has a personal or family preparedness plan? And I think we all think, oh, I know where the fire extinguisher is, but do you have a plan and have you talked about it with your family? So that's something that we'll talk about today. Disaster preparedness is really a continuous process. FEMA defines it as a continuous cycle of planning, organizing, training, equipping, exercising, evaluating, and taking corrective action in an effort to ensure effective coordination during an incident response. And that's a lot of words. But I think the graphic is really, I think, important, is that we're always preparing. And even after an event, we're going to assess, recover, and prepare for the next event. And I think you can apply that to your own personal family as well. And what we at TPS our goal is to also equip pediatricians to talk to families. And so I appreciate the partnership, being able to talk with your organization, because you are dealing with families and with children all the time. And so if we can equip you, because as you go out and talk to all of your organizations, that we can equip our families across the state of Texas to be prepared. One resource that I like to direct, this is a patient-facing resource that I think is really well done, is the AAP Family Readiness Kit. It's easily obtained online. You could basically Google Family Readiness Kit. And it has 4 principles. Build a kit, just sort of backup food, clothes, medicines, and we'll go over that. Make a plan. And that entails communication, transportation, reunification, who picks up the kids at school, where do we meet, how are we going to communicate, be informed, and make a plan with your friends and neighbors, have backup battery-powered radios if the power goes out, and then get involved. And this is a really good opportunity to get the children involved as well. So when you test the smoke alarms, involving your children, and then talking with your schools and teachers, does your child's school have a disaster plan? And does the daycare center have a disaster plan? What are they going to do if there's a tornado, or if you're on the Gulf Coast, what is the evacuation plan if there's a hurricane, you're at work and child is at school or daycare? So I think having these conversations before the storm hits is really important. And then what goes in a disaster, or what goes in an emergency supply kit? And I think important to think about chargers. So all of our electronics, what happens when they go dead, having a battery backup power, or those little battery fuel cells are really important. Water, non-perishable food, some changes of clothing, blankets can be helpful, cash, and then any medicines. Think about if you have medicines, do they need to be refrigerated? Do I need a cooler? Planning that ahead, and then any emergency documents and information. But now to get to what we intend to talk about today, just extreme weather. And we don't have time to go over all of the details. So my goal will be to kind of direct you to some resources that you can then prepare with your organizations and with your families. Extreme weather, really, there's multiple threats based on region and geography. We always say in Texas, if you don't like the weather, stay a minute, it'll change. But it changes quickly, and we all just sort of went through the recent cold snap. But we all know across our state, our geography is vast, and we face a wide variety of extreme weather: tornadoes, hurricanes on the coast, severe thunderstorms, floods, wildfires out in West Texas, and then, of course, our occasional winter weather, but it can still be significant. One resource that I want to direct you to is ready.gov. And this actually is a pretty well done website with easy resources that are very user friendly. You could direct patients and families to this website. Right now, they specifically have a page that is all about winter readiness. And that's where a lot of this information is going to come from. I think important to highlight, 63% of temperature-related deaths are due to cold exposure. And that's across the country. And home heating is the second leading cause of home fires. And so in the winter is when most fires happen. So keeping anything can burn away from your fireplace or heating sources, proper ventilation for any fireplaces, stoves, and heaters, and never use a gas stove or oven to heat your home. And never run a closed car in a garage. The carbon monoxide builds up very quickly. We all know, I think now after 2021, drip our faucets when the temperature is below freezing, can open those cabinet doors. For travel, you definitely want to make sure your car is serviced and ready. The antifreeze levels are proper and tires are in good condition. And that emergency kit, when the weather hits, keep that emergency kit in your car, and keep those blankets and maybe some non-perishable food and water if you happen to get stranded. And then, of course, since it's not summer now, but in Texas, I don't think you can talk about weather without talking about heat, and especially keeping kids safe in the heat. And I think obviously you want to wear sunscreen, stay in the shade, wear light clothing, stay hydrated. But I think the most important thing to highlight, and we highlight this with families, is never leave a child alone in a car. And I think that's probably one of our when we see heat exposures of children in the ER, a lot of times it's when they're in an enclosed space. There was an article in Pediatrics that examined how fast does the temperature rise in a car. And it can rise 3 degrees Fahrenheit every 5 minutes. So while it might only be 75 outside, it could be 105 inside the car. And so really, and I think we see this publicized on TV and everything now, but I think it's important to continue to reiterate to our families, never forget the child in the back seat. And we hope that they're in their rear seat, backwards facing car seats, but not to forget them in the heat. And so that in there on ready.gov, there is also other resources, not just winter, but all disasters, all hazards, including summer, and then other potential disasters. And
Hey,
so
Dr.
also,
Lowe,
yes,
if I may ask a question, in the state of Texas, about 2/3 of our kids are low income, are coming from low income families. Does that sort of give us this sort of extra thing to watch out for in Texas? I mean, are these families that are much more likely to be impacted by adverse weather?
Absolutely. And I think that those, it's multifactorial, because they're a vulnerable population for numerous reasons. They are maybe not necessarily going to have the resources and protection, in whatever their housing situation is, and then what is their ability to escape, to evacuate, to prepare. I think there's always an education disparity as well. And so I absolutely would agree that those populations are at much greater risk for extreme weather, and then being able to prepare for those extreme weather situations. And so that's where I'm trying to get this information out, and we appreciate this platform to be able to distribute, just getting the knowledge out. And really, these are low cost preparations. You don't have to buy a bunch of stuff, but just even making a plan. There's no cost involved with making a plan, but distributing the information and empowering them with information.
And is there something that policymakers should be doing? I mean, because we're so big and we have so many adverse weather conditions and such a high proportion of low income families, is there something that policymakers should be doing around extreme weather and children and families?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I'm not sure I'm the the best authority to answer that, but I think making disaster preparedness a priority at a policy making level, I think is really important, because if our as we can see, if our infrastructure fails, if our infrastructure collapses, those vulnerable populations, and especially our children, are going to be at risk. And so
Yeah.
I think we think as pediatricians or organizations that advocate for children and families, we don't necessarily think about, oh, I'm going to lobby our policymakers to make sure that we have infrastructure plans, and because we're usually focused on very specific child and family issues. But I do think when it comes to weather, when it comes to preparedness, making sure that the state is prepared and is resilient is really important.
Very good. Dr. Lowe,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Was there a
Yeah.
final slide or anything, or is
This
this
is the final slide. It
okay?
was just going to direct everyone. Ready.gov is really helpful. Healthychildren.gov. If you're not familiar, that is the AAP's patient family facing website that has a lot of information And that's also where I got a lot of the extreme weather info for children. And then the two weather websites, weather.gov is the National Weather Service and weather.com is the Weather Channel. I think you'll find the Weather Channel is a little more user-friendly, and the pediatrics article I cited.
Very good. Dr. Lowe, out of Dallas Children's and the Texas Pediatric Society, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For
Thanks
all
for
that
letting
you
me go
do.
first while I run to my ER shift. I appreciate it. And thank you so
We
much for the
appreciate
work
all
you do.
do. Thank you very much, Dr. Lowe. Very good. All right. Marisol.
Yes.
Hopefully Jeff will stop sharing before he leaves as well. So there we go.
There we go.
Marisol,
Yes.
what do you have for us today?
Well, welcome everyone. And I'll be short because like we said, we do have a full agenda, and thank you to everyone for joining us this morning. I want to start every meeting that we meet with some information or updates about Texas FLC. I won't go through all of this. You know who we are, and I am going to keep pushing who we are and what our vision is. And we are child and family focused organizations, community leaders, influencers from across the state. And thank you for taking time this morning. What I wanted to go over were our membership benefits for Texas FLC. We have very similar ones that we've had the previous years. This first page is the same as last year. If anything, they are enhanced. We are now doing bi-weekly meetings where we're meeting every other Thursday starting today instead of weekly, hoping to allow some more flexibility in your schedule. I know this is an hour away from your workday and from your commitments at home. We still have our work groups that I want to keep providing more information on so you can join us. We do have our TREC meetings and 10 meetings scheduled every month. And then our public policy and advocacy work group is ad hoc as needed. And we actually do have a meeting coming up for that work group at the end of this month. If you did not receive that email, let me know if you'd like to join. Mandy and Jason will be leading that along with a couple of external partners. We'll have our legislative roadmaps that are coming out later this year. Legislative Roadmap Learning event in November. We'll have a Texas FLC advocacy training that we will be hosting in the fall that would be available to all of our members. And some templates, some scripts, some talking points that we are working together during this interim year. The other big one that is fairly new, and it's collaborative fundraising training, roundtables and opportunities to share best practices to increase development network, and submitting collaborative proposals. We do have Erica Raggett on our team at Children at Risk who's working to schedule a couple of these meetings this year where we get some foundations and possible donors to talk about what they're looking for when it comes to collaborative processes. And we are always looking for other partners if we're not involved as Children at Risk or Texas FLC, to be able to connect organizations to each other to help with a collaborative proposal. The last page are the newer ones. We do have, the biggest one is the new opportunity to co-author an opinion editorial on topics that are approved by Texas FLC and Children at Risk alongside Dr. Bob Sanborn or other industry senior leaders. This one is a big one that everyone agreed would be an amazing opportunity. If you are interested in some sort of publication for yourself, your organization, please reach out. And we do have some topics for this year already, so we can find the best fit for you. Also, you can join us as a guest on our radio show. I don't know if any of you know about our radio show. Listen to Growing Up in America the Way It Is. It's good exposure for your organization, for any events that you have coming up. And it's for across the state of Texas, not just the Houston region. You can advertise any events that you have coming up. We get emails quite often asking, hey, can I come on the radio show? We want to be able to provide that for you. So I really wanted to just talk about the membership benefits. If you have not signed up for your organization, let me know. At the beginning of this chat, I dropped in the link where you can sign up for the email sign up. And that is just so you know when the meetings are, what our agenda is, the recordings, and any updates we have. You don't have to be a paid member for that. We welcome everyone to join our meetings. We want to partner with as many organizations and people across the state. But if you want to learn more about the membership with Texas FLC, please reach out to me, email me. I'd love to get to know all of you and your organizations. I also dropped a link in there for my meeting calendar, so you can go ahead and schedule. You don't have to wait for me to tell you when I have openings. Just go in there, click, and find a time that works best for you, and I'd be happy to meet with you. But that's what I had.
All right. Thank you very much, Mighty Soul. Thanks for all that good information about Texas FLC. And we really do like having people on that radio show. So if you want to be on the radio show, let us know. And that's a great segue for Jason Sabo, who was on the radio show last week. We did at the beginning of the year, we do a prediction show on the radio where we predict what's going to happen this year. And Jason was one of our prognosticators this year, along with a number of other people from across the state. And Jason and I had completely different predictions on who would be the next president, by the way. And let me just give you a hint. You want my prediction to come true, not Jason's. So,
well, fortunately, I also said the Cowboys were going to win the Super Bowl.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So Jason's predictions are, but remember who I said would win the Super Bowl? I said the Eagles. So I'm also equally bad on that. So, Jason,
Leah, I tried, Lady King. I tried.
Leah, are you a big Cowboys fan, by the way?
No,
Oh.
I desperately despise, but I am from Philly.
Oh,
And so, yeah, but so I have to be, well, my son no longer works for the Cowboys, so now I can really despise them even more than I already did. But if you're from Philly, you're born with it. It's whoever they're playing, you're against automatically.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of civic pride in Philadelphia. So at least that's what we call it right now, civic pride. So yeah. So very good. Jason, tell us this is the interim, right? It feels like the legislative session just goes on and on and on. But what are we looking like for this coming year?
Well, the legislative session does just keep going on and on and on and on. That's 4 ons, because 4 special sessions, reminding everyone that the Texas legislature met for more calendar days in 2023 than any other year in the state's history, and arguably accomplished less in said time than in any other legislative year in the state's history. But that is kind of where we are. And, I was on the Growing Up in America radio show last week on Radio Free Houston, KPFT. You should tune in online if you don't live in Houston. It's actually really fun, and I encourage people to listen in. And we had a long conversation about what's happening this year, mostly electorally about the elections. And obviously that's kind of the focus. And we had so much talk about what's going to happen in November, right? But, and that's important, obviously, for us and the planet. But what also is important is what's going to happen much, much, much sooner. And we had a lot of conversation on the radio show last week about the importance of voting, which is something that we can all agree upon. I bet you people do not realize that the registration to vote in the singular most important election for the state legislature closes in 18 days, a little more than 2 weeks, less than 3 weeks. Some dates I want to throw out to people, just for context here. February 5th is the last day to register to vote in the March primary. February 20th is the first day of early voting in the March primary. March 5th is the March primary. Texas, as we've discussed previously, has one of the earliest primaries of any state in the country, meaning that we're extremely incumbent friendly, which is important for this year because we have so many contested elections. So much is kind of hinging on the primary. If you remember that about 95% of the state legislative races for the Senate and for the House are determined in the primary. The general election, because of redistricting, is practically irrelevant when it comes to like the larger sway within the legislature. So where we see at this point the big ideological shifts happening are in the primaries, particularly this year in the Republican primary. And I think that people need to be paying really close attention to this, because what ultimately happens in the Republican primary will drive what happens in the general election, and then in turn during next session. And it could be weirder and more confused. believe it or not. And I'm just going to use a guy named J.C. Jatan from Houston, Republican, running in the primary as a primary opponent, and he voted for vouchers. So Greg Abbott is actively campaigning on his behalf. He voted for impeachment. So Ken Paxton is actively campaigning against him. So you have this one Republican state representative that the governor is supporting and the attorney general is opposing. So the whole thing has been put into a blender. And we really, I think personally, very few of these incumbents the people who had the audacity to vote for impeachment or against vouchers, I think very few of them are going to lose. So what we're going to see is not a lot of turnover in the actual people who are running for re-election. However, the important story here, I think, is the people who are choosing not to run for re-election to kind of avoid having to pass through that Republican primary gauntlet. A guy named, I spent a lot of time in Llano County, as everybody knows. And the guy who represents that part of Texas, Andy Murr, kind of ran the impeachment process. He's not running for re-election. So what's going to happen in a lot of situations is these more, kind of centrist, centrist as defined by Texas centrism, right? Centrist Republican candidates those seats are going to turn over to become for somebody who might be potentially, for example, more pro-voucher, not because that member who is a very safe incumbent loses in the primary, but because they're like, man, I just don't want to do this anymore. Or I'm old and I have another life that I want to live, or I want to run for some other office or something else. That's where we're going to see the continuing rightward trend of the legislature via these kind of incumbents stepping down, not because they're being beaten this election, because it's so incredibly incumbent friendly here. But all of that to say, if you're really wanting to watch and urge people of both political persuasions, right, to get involved, and there is no more important moment than to do it between now and February 5th in terms of voter registration, and now in February, 20th in terms of early voting for the March 5th primary. So remember, the game is afoot, and arguably the most important game of all for the state legislature's perspective is happening right now.
Jason, next week I'm doing a series of press conferences around the state where we talk about the quality of our schools and how our Texas state legislature basically ruined the opportunity to invest in our schools by not doing teacher raises, not using any of the surplus to focus on pandemic learning loss. I mean, is there something that you think during the election cycle around children and families that there may be traction on? Is there something that we could be focusing on?
I think that there will be things where there's traction. I don't think it'll necessarily be positive traction. Immigration, I think that it's, it still scares me what could happen between now and the election in Texas. I think that the teacher pay raise issue is real. And I think that there are a lot of people who are still smarting about that. And a lot of people understand that their kids' schools are different than they were 3 or 4 years ago, personnel-wise. I don't think that's going away. And I think that that's got a saliency that transcends party that won't, it'll stay part of the equation.
Yeah, very good. Jason Sabo in Austin. Thank you very much, Jason. And this is an important thing. If you are going to Austin and you're not from Austin and you want to get a tour of the Capitol and meet some legislators, Mandy and Jason are always in Austin and are happy to do that with any Texas FLC members. I mean, obviously, there's a lot more happening during a legislative session, but not during the legislative session. It's also a good time to meet a lot of the staffers and sort of get to sit down and talk. So feel free to reach out to Mandy and Jason for that. So thank you, Jason, very much. All right, let's go to Dr. Bikini. Dr. Bikini, how are you doing?
I'm good. I do have a little bit of a virus myself today, but it's nice to see everyone. I hope
now, Claire, do you have flu or anything that we should be worried about?
I think I have a another respiratory virus that's not flu or COVID, but
Okay.
it happens. I have 2 kids in preschool, so it's
Yep.
always something new.
So what do you have
But
for us today?
yes, I was just going to go over 3 quick topics because I know you have a packed agenda, which was super exciting. The first thing to talk about is we are in respiratory viral season, obviously. And we are seeing a lot of, I mean, we had a big RSV kind of peak that's starting to come down. We're seeing a ton of flu and COVID right now, plus a few other viruses. CDC continues to give us a really nice, amount of data that's updated basically in real time to tell us what's going on. You can see here, this just looks at all respiratory illness. Texas is red, which if you look here is, kind of in the very high category. So again, we're really peaking here in Texas right now, and we're especially peaking in flu and COVID. Again, RSV is coming down. And then, they let you do this by state. And so here we are looking at state-based data. You can see kind of all respiratory illnesses, flu, kind of started to come down a little bit. COVID's still on the way up and RSV's come way down, which is really nice. That RSV at least is, it peaked. It was not good for a bit. That's come down, but now we're seeing a bunch of flu and COVID. And we're certainly seeing a lot of kids in the hospital with flu and COVID and complications from those infections. COVID is hard because, again, not many people are getting officially tested anymore. And so we go to wastewater to give us an even better idea of how much COVID is actually circulating in our community. And overall, nationally, we're at very high levels. You probably saw in the news that we're in the second highest amount of COVID circulating ever, and that's true. Back in January 2022, we had, kind of the first Omicron variant, and you can see here that it was a massive amount of COVID. Here, we're certainly higher than we've been, in the peak since then, but we're nowhere near where we were in that Omicron peak initially. And again, they have wastewater by state. A few weeks ago, I showed you this data, and it was mostly in the Northeast that was having their peak of COVID. Now, Texas has reached that. So we're really in the highest level, very high of COVID here in Texas. Again, COVID is, for kids and adults, I mean, most people are going to have an okay, illness. But the problem is that this can cause severe disease in all age groups, especially individuals with pre-existing medical conditions, people who are over 65 and young infants. And so we know that the vaccine for flu and COVID reduces the severity of illness and also reduces the complications. Sadly, we really have not done a good job with these vaccines. Again, CDC this year is providing us with weekly data on how we're doing on vaccines. This is looking at trends in children. And you can see here that overall, these are children 6 months to 17 years. We're at 44% essentially for flu vaccine, and we're at 8% for COVID vaccine. That's really suboptimal since we know that, the children who die of flu, who die of COVID are going to be much more likely those who are not vaccinated. These vaccines are safe. They don't completely prevent transmission. So you can still get flu, you can still get COVID, but they really reduce the severity of illness, and they reduce the risk of complications, being hospitalized or dying from these infectious diseases. I will say, you still have time to get the vaccine. We are peaking now, but the flu and COVID seasons are far from over. So, this is still a good time to get the vaccines. Vaccines are safe. And right now, the COVID vaccine is actually very well matched. So not only will it reduce severity, but it's actually preventing some, cases of COVID at this time because it's pretty well matched for the circulating variant. So that's what I was going to talk about for respiratory viral illnesses. I just had, 2 other things quickly to put in there. I thought this was a really, nice paper that was published in Pediatrics last week that looked at these, I've talked a lot about firearm violence and how this is something that we really need to address to help prevent the leading cause of death in kids. This paper actually looked at these anonymous statewide school reporting systems, and they specifically looked at the Say Something Anonymous report system, which is interesting in Texas because, we do require an anonymous reporting tool, but different school districts use different tools, some of which have been, better utilized than others. But this looked at one state that had implemented this widely, and they looked at 4 years. And they saw that this enabled over 1,000 confirmed mental health interventions, over 100 saves where clear evidence of imminent suicide crisis was present and averted, prevented 38 acts of school violence, including weapons recovered on school grounds, and averted 6 confirmed planned school attacks. This is, pretty, I mean, by no means is it picking up everything, but it is, it is working. And so, I bring this up because I know as a group that is going to do advocacy and kind of policy recommendations, I think we're getting, I mean, this is a huge issue. We need to address it in many ways, but trying to equip schools with the most evidence-based ways of, training kids, allowing these anonymous reporting, I think can prevent, severe, and terrible things. At least this data shows that. So I brought that up. There's another report that I'm not really going to go into because I don't think I have time given how big the agenda is, but I'll put it in the chat, that looks at kind of violence in the school year 2021 to 2022, really sobering statistics, but I'll put that in the chat. And the very last thing I was going to talk about is it's the new year. Kids want to be healthy, families want to be healthy. Everybody, is wanting to do a better job in exercising, but as we've all experienced, it's been cold, and then kids don't. Although my kids like playing outside in the cold more than I do, but I think there are some. It's important to get kids moving, even if they're inside. And so you already heard about healthychildren.org. I bring it up all the time too. I love it. It's in English and Spanish, and so just wanted to put this out there in case you want to spread it out to your communities about fun things that kids can do that really does give them some real exercise inside. And I would say, my kids, by far number one is the dance time. We do a lot of dance related exercise. I try to get them to do chore challenges to keep working on that. And then there was, in terms of being healthy, one thing that we talk a lot about as pediatricians is, there's, people think juice is healthy. We know 100%, fruit juice may be better than juice that has, sugar and other things added to it. But we've always been concerned that too much juice will really lead to increased weight and not good calories, et cetera. And this was a nice meta-analysis that looked at multiple studies that really does confirm, that, if you consume at least 1 glass of 100% fruit juice a day, even if it's 100% fruit juice, it is associated with increased weight gain in kids and adults. And I think, WIC still, allows people to buy juice. There's a lot of other things about it. I think we need to just make sure that as a group, we know that juice is a treat, but it's not healthy. And it's be much better to, have a little bit of juice with that you cut with water, maybe, 3/4 water with a little bit of juice just for the taste if kids really want that. But 100% fruit juice is not the best thing for kids, and we already know soda, et cetera, is not good. Really, water is the best thing for kids to drink. So just kind of put those two little kind of health tips out there. And that's what I had, Bob. Hopefully that was okay.
I have a couple questions. I won't get to all of them though, Claire. But one of them I wanted to ask is on flu shots.
Yes.
How do we stand compared to previous years on flu shots right now? Because I know there's been an adverse impact on vaccinations overall.
Oh yes, yeah. Flu's down. Yeah, flu's been down for the past few years. It's down further this year compared with last year. It's really disappointing. Yeah.
And are we seeing child deaths increase because of that, Claire?
It's a good question. The child death rate so far, the deaths get delayed. We're right in the peak of flu season. So ask me that in another 4 to 6 weeks. We've certainly had too many pediatric deaths. I mean, any pediatric death from these illnesses is too many, but we've certainly seen them. But in terms of how does it stack up compared to past years, I don't have that information yet. But yeah, we're seeing, there's an outbreak of measles going on in the country right now. We're certainly seeing outbreaks of vaccine preventable illness, all over the place. But yeah, flu deaths, I'll be able to give you a better report on that in a few weeks.
And then Claire, on a lighter note, as a pediatrician, what's your New Year's resolution, by the way, Claire?
Oh gosh, I don't even think I had time to formally put one together. Our family is trying to be healthier. We're trying to cook together. We're trying to, get out and walk more, I'd say, and also just to be fully present and enjoy. I mean, my kids are already 5 and 3, which is crazy to me.
Wow.
It's going by so fast, and just want to be more present. And as much as I love work, I need to have time to really dedicate to them and just enjoy this really special time. I mean, it's just a magical time with them and their what they like to do and their imaginations and everything.
It's hard to believe that Anna is 3 years old now, right? I mean,
yeah.
I remember when she was born, when you took 2 weeks off from Texas Family Leadership to have Anna, and then you were right back at it with
right.
us.
Well, she joined me. It was pretty fun. Yeah.
Dr. Claire Bikini, thank you very much, Claire.
Thank you.
Let's we want to go to talk a little bit about Opportunity Youth. Adriana Wilson is here with us with the Greater Houston Opportunity Youth Collaborative. Adriana, I know that you wanted to talk a little bit about this. I also think there's still, and you may find this, Adriana, there's still so many people that don't know what Opportunity Youth is. And I wonder if you might give us sort of a little bit on that and then get into talking about what you guys are up to.
Of course. So actually, I had planned on starting with an overview just so that
Excellent.
Everybody knows.
Excellent. Very good.
Yes, I am very cognizant that this is my world that I live in every day, but a lot of people, it's not. So I'm Adriana Wilson. I am the new managing director for the Greater Houston Opportunity Youth Collaborative, which is focused on advancing supports systems for the young adults that are disconnected. So who are Opportunity Youth? Opportunity Youth are young adults between the ages of 16 and 24 who are not in school, not in college or post-secondary, not in work or working low-wage dead-end jobs. The rate of disconnection of 16 to 24-year-olds out of school and work is an indicator of community well-being. In general, the data shows that rates vary widely by race and ethnicity, by gender, and by geography. Opportunity Youth and young adults are in the age range where people are developing many of the capabilities required to freely chart their own course in life. And so without the proper supports, this can really derail their life at this point. Data shows that the disconnection in teens to early 20s correlates to a lot of difficulties later in life. Some of this is information that we think will motivate elected officials, corporate and civic leaders to pay more attention to the issue of Opportunity Youth. After 15 years, a young adult that remains connected or in the system is positively, right, through education, through gainful employment, is earning significantly more, estimated at about $38,000 more a year. They're also 45% more likely to own a home, 42% more likely to be employed, and 52% more likely to be in good health. Other research is showing us that youth disconnection is also associated with lower levels of educational attainment, higher rates of substance abuse, worse health, less sustainable relationships, and more criminal activity. So this is a very pressing issue that we need to pay attention to. Nationally, there are about 4.5 million disconnected young adults, and the national disconnection rate is about 12.1%. So this is not just something that is central to our area, but something that we really need to be bringing awareness to. It is also a very big issue here in Texas. So 1 in 10 of those disconnected youth from the nation are here in Texas. We have about 500,000 in the Texas area. And as you can see, while there is greater concentration of Opportunity Youth in our cities, obviously because there's more people, what we're seeing is that there's actually higher rates of disconnection in our rural communities. So while we do need to focus efforts in those big cities, we also need to make sure that we're paying attention to the rural areas and that they're getting access to the resources that those young adults need to succeed as well. To better understand this issue locally, the Greater Houston Opportunity Youth Collaborative commissioned a report from the Measure of America of the 13-county Houston region, and that report's going to be released later this year. We are hoping to raise awareness of the issue through that report by a targeted education and engagement campaign with the release of that report. But here's a little snapshot of some of the things that we're already learning from that report. Since 2019, the Opportunity Youth population in the 13-county region has grown by more than 21,000 individuals for a new estimated total of 129,700 disconnected young adults. This puts the disconnection rate at 14.5%, which is higher than that national average, or that national rate. We're also seeing that one out of 4 disconnected young adults in Texas live in the greater Houston 13-county region. And so we really want to make sure that we are doing some work to make sure that these young adults are getting the supports that they need to move on to a successful path. So in Houston, what we've done is we've created the Greater Houston Opportunity Youth Collaborative, and we've been doing this work since the release of the Kinder Institute report in 2016. We started with just some basic pilot work around Opportunity Youth, understanding what were some of the methods that might be successful with re-engaging these young adults and what are the supports that they needed. That eventually expanded into just a group of leaders who were interested in advancing this work, and eventually the development of the Greater Houston Opportunity Youth Collaborative. And so what we do is we bring together various different stakeholders. The youth voice is very important. So we have a youth advisory council that we use to inform our work. The community, so local nonprofits, volunteers, private foundations, employers. We're also involved in national and state partnerships. We work very closely with the Aspen Institute's Opportunity Youth Forum to understand the work that's happening nationally, best practices, and bring those back to our area. And then also the state movement that's happening with the Texas Opportunity Youth Network. We're heavily involved in one of our co-chairs sits on the board of that. And then we also work with organizations like Children at Risk to make sure that some of those policy and advocacy movements are going forward. And then, of course, we have a local committee of local leaders who are helping to steer the strategy points for the strategic plan for the collaborative. The collaborative focuses on kind of 4 main points. We work to bring together these stakeholders so that there is some kind of coordinated action and services, connecting of services, right? So making sure that as these young people are accessing these various services, we understand, and we're bringing those together to make it an easier system for the young adults. We have 2 reconnection strategies where we're working to access databases to identify these young adults and get them reconnected to the system. And then another one where we are working in the healthcare field to create an education, training, and employment pathway into healthcare. We also are looking to raise awareness of the issue of disconnection, right? So one of the ways that we'll do that is through the release of this report. We're planning several large events to talk about this data and how community members and employers can get involved and help support the movement. And then of course, always elevating the voice and experiences of those young adults who are living this day to day and how we can help to improve the services so that it makes it more accessible for them. And, so I know we talked about some of the things, but really what we do is we're really looking for engagement of everybody, right? So while we are looking locally in the greater Houston area, we are also looking at that 13-county region, right? So we're working with a few other counties right now to help them figure out what's happening in their counties and how to develop plans. We're focusing on deeper connection and plans with employers involved, right? Understanding the industry needs and how they can start to also shift their systems to be more amenable to bringing in these young adults for employment and understand the challenges that they're facing and how we can make them successful together. Really working with to mitigate some of those pandemic effects, right? So we saw that big growth in numbers and working with the reconnection strategies of utilizing those databases. So we've started piloting that with HISD, looking at recent graduates who didn't enroll in college or don't have gainful employment and giving them targeted messages to get them re-engaged. And then leveraging public dollars, right? So we've taken on the Gulf Coast Workforce Board's Next Gen program through WIOA funding to help support some of the programmatic elements in young adults' needs. In the next year, we've got a lot of big things. We'll be piloting some peer navigator things. We are looking at scaling those reconnection strategies, and then, of course, the release of that data report. And so that's a little bit about what's going on here.
Adriana, one question I have about Opportunity Youth. So oftentimes in the United States and in Texas, we point to the lack of a social safety net, that causes a lot of our problems, like we don't do enough preventative stuff. And I wonder, when we compare ourselves to other developed nations, whether it be Japan, Australia, or Europe, do they also have Opportunity Youth in those places, even though there is a stronger safety net?
They do. So the Aspen Institute actually has a worldwide network that they're working to engage with Opportunity Youth across the world. I'm not sure exactly kind of what the rates look like in varying countries, but I do know that it's also a national move or a worldwide movement as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Adriana, thank you very, very much for the work that you're doing. So we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So in our final couple minutes here, I think we have 8 minutes left. We want to go to Rachel Green, who's here with Kiva, and talk a little bit about the work that they're doing at Kiva. Rachel, you there? There she is. How are you doing, Rachel?
Hi, I am well. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Talk to us a little bit about Kiva.
So Kiva, and if I may rely with Marisol, who's going to help me with my presentation today, Kiva is an international crowdfunding website based on the theories of Nobel Prize winner Muhammad Yunus, who believes that in microeconomics, small amounts of money can make a really big difference in people's lives. We have a saying at Kiva: dreams are universal, opportunity is not. And so we're really focused on helping people build businesses in a way that does not harm them. And it also allows a whole bunch of people all around the world to help people start businesses. And so I'll go through my little presentation a little bit to explain a little bit more. So I am with Bayou Microfund, which is an nonprofit here in Houston. And we host the Kiva Houston Hub, which is a part of Kiva's US Hub program. Kiva itself is a global organization that works with countries, entrepreneurs in countries all over the world. I'll be speaking with you today very specifically about the Kiva US system.
And somehow, Rachel, we lost the sharing with Marisol. So somehow we're not back to your little.
Okay.
So. Anyway, we're
sorry for that. You can keep talking. I'll work on getting that up.
Okay. So in a sense, what it is Kiva has microloans in the amounts of, these are interest-free microloans in the amounts of $1,000 to $15,000. And it's very specifically to organizations that work with your group. One of the stressors, one of the things that can cause problems in children's and families' lives is if families cannot financially sustain themselves. And so Kiva is a wonderful source of interest-free access to funding for people who are looking to build their businesses. And it is what we would consider the very first step. So Marisol, if you're able to go to slide number 2. So to backtrack, we're online crowdfunded microlender that funds microloans to small businesses and eligible nonprofits around the world. All Kiva US loans are interest-free. So I'm going to talk with you about the Kiva US loan system, which is interest-free. And at Kiva, we have the community of lenders who are just regular people like you and I. Kiva is the one that moves the money, and they are the ones that approve the applications. So Kiva has a national team, and they also have hubs in their US system. In Texas, Bayou Microfund is here in Houston. We're the Kiva Houston hub. Startup Waco is a hub that exists in Waco. And the national team can deal with anyone across the state of Texas. Anyone can apply for Kiva. I am happy to speak with anybody at any point if you want to know more about the process. As a hub, we try to coach, advocate, and help people through the application process, as well as the fundraising process. If you could share the next slide, Marisol. So the way Kiva works is the community is your bank, not a bank. So the idea is that anyone can lend as little as $25 to an entrepreneur on the Kiva website. And the person receives, once they get everybody to, they reach their goal, say the goal is $1,000. Once they reach their goal, they receive the money in their PayPal account, and then they can use that for their business. And as they repay, Kiva pays back everybody that lent to their campaign. And again, this is 0% interest. So a Kiva lender, who can be anybody, is interested in impact, not in interest. And so with a lot of people working together to support people on a local basis or even a global basis, it really adds up quickly and you can help people. Next slide, please. So Kiva has very friendly terms in terms of we are dealing with entrepreneurs who are maybe excluded from the traditional banking system for a variety of reasons. And here on the slide, you can see just some of the minimum requirements. We focus on financially excluded entrepreneurs. That can mean startups, young people, older people, women, people of color, LGBTQ. There's a whole lot of people that fall into financially excluded entrepreneurs. As you can see, you have to be at least 18 years old. So that's even open to if you have an outstanding young person in a foster program, somebody that's cycling out, that they're more entrepreneurial as opposed to going into the workforce. Kiva is a potential option for them if they have the right coaching and have a business plan.
Rachel, we're about to run out of time, and so we'll be losing everyone. I wonder if you might give people a link to where they need to go to find out more information, and maybe sort of what would your final sort of big words be on this?
Yes, I would say this is a wonderful resource for people in urban and rural communities. It is the first step in helping people access funding for their business. And it's a wonderful thing to stabilize families when people are not having to worry about that. And we have seen time and time again, small amounts of money can make a really big change. So here, this is a resource that you can go to, that website, kivaushub.org /borrower. It explains how the system works. And then the last slide, the very last slide, you can reach out to me. Anybody can access the system at kiva.org/borrow to even start lending for fun. You can see how it works. And there's my information there. I'm happy to talk with you wherever you are in the state to share what a wonderful resource and tool this can be.
This is fantastic, Rachel. Thank you very much. I'm sorry we had such a short amount of time. We had such a packed agenda today.
No, that's okay. Thanks for your time. I wish you the best in all you do.
Very good. Thank you, Rachel. And that's it for us at the Texas Family Leadership Council on behalf of all the chairs who are here today and everyone else. And thank you, Claire, very much, Dr. Bikini. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, everyone who participated. We'll see you in 2 weeks, I guess. Is that right, Marisol? 2 weeks is our next meeting?
Yes, correct. February 1.
All right. See you guys then. Take care. Happy New Year.